Good evening and welcome to Primetime Lawmakers for March 7, 2011, the 25th legislative day of the 2011 session of the Georgia General Assembly. I'm Scott Slade. Coming up at tonight's program, final passage for the $18 billion 2011 supplemental budget. The full school day is back as Governor Nathan Deal announces a new pre-K proposal. The Senate considers several bills aimed at asserting states' rights over the federal government. We continue our leadership interview series tonight. House Majority Whip Representative Edward Lindsey. And more on today's pre-K news. We have a panel of early education enthusiasts. I'll be joined in studio by Representative Judy Manning and Representative Stephanie Stuckey Benfield. All that is coming up tonight on Primetime Lawmakers. But first, final passage of the amended 2011 budget. And Wandy Lawson is live at the Capitol. And Wandy, I understand that passage of HB 77 was historic.
You certainly could say that, Scott. You could not find a legislator anywhere here in the halls who could remember a time when the budget has been passed without going to a House Senate Conference Committee. I have to say, in my 10 years here or more, I haven't seen it either. Passage came quickly today, though, despite the fact that a last-minute $10.5 million ad had to be made to the Morehouse School of Medicine. Here's House Appropriations Chairman Terry England.
Morehouse and Mercer, the state of Georgia, has had an agreement with those two private schools to provide physicians to needed areas. Morehouse's mission has been to provide those in underserved and underprivileged areas, usually inner city or urban areas, where Mercer's has been to rural Georgia. Now, as the money, as we do with the disproportionate share of hospitals, a lot of times the hospitals put up a sum of cash. That sum then is put in to draw down federal matching dollars. That had been being done with some cash from Morehouse through Grady. And up until this year, that number had been, Grady kept a piece of that money because it actually cost them a little bit to do that on their disproportionate share. When they got it back, it actually penalized them a little bit. They were doing it to help Morehouse out because they draw on a pool of the physicians from Morehouse to help with Grady with the emergency room and the residency program there. Now, last year that number jumped, and part of the problem, and this is just my understanding, part of the problem came because there were some error dollars spent in this formula at some point that jacked the number up, that got everything kind of out of balance, for lack of a better term.
The House approved the Senate version of HB 77 with several amendments by a vote of 140 to 22. About an hour later, the Senate agreed to the House's changes and gave that $18 billion spending plan final passage. In other news, earlier in the day, Governor Nathan Deal announced that input from pre-K providers and parents had influenced the change in how $54 million in cuts to the pre-K program would be made. The governor now recommends a full-day program with fewer school days during the year.
This new plan generates the necessary savings while providing a full-day pre-K program. To achieve these savings, we will be making the following programmatic adjustments. The school year will be shortened from 180 days to 160 days. Class size will be increased from 20 to 22 students.
Upping the pupil-teacher ratio to 11-to-1 will save the state $22 million. Cutting 10 days of instruction saves the program from being reduced to half-day, and teachers can expect a smaller cut to their salaries, which average $30,000 per year for lead pre-K teachers.
Pre-K teachers will receive 90% of their current salaries. Our original half-day proposal would have included a 30% reduction. It eliminates the transition coach program and the governor's pre-K books included in our original plan. And because we are returning to a full-day model, there is no need for the additional transportation or extended day funding that was in our original proposal.
Asked whether he would give consideration to a proposal offered by Senate Democrats to increase the percentage of lottery revenue for education, the governor said other states have been adversely affected by similar changes.
The reason that we did not address that is that we believe that we know we have the most successful lottery program in the entire country. We have seen the example of other states, Texas being the one I have been told about, where they attempted to legislatively dictate those kinds of percentage increases. They suffered a decrease in their overall funding for their programs, and it has taken them a very long time, even after they reversed that, to try to get back to where they were.
Senate Democrats, meanwhile, continue to push their proposal to use a larger portion of lottery proceeds to fund the Hope Scholarship and pre-K. Senator Jason Carter says the state's priorities are out of alignment with producing a strong education system.
When they say a successful lottery, in this state we're talking about maximizing the number of people who play. Now, that's not a public benefit. The only reason we have a lottery is because it's supposed to fund an educational account. The amount of that percentage is far below the national average, and what we have done is maximize the amount of gambling and minimize the amount that goes to education. There's bipartisan concern about that, and we would like to see that fixed. If you reduce the lottery retailers commission by 1% to go back to the governor's original plan, that would free up $34 million. If you raise the percentage payment that the Lottery Corporation puts into the education account, you could raise another, say, 50 grand, 40 grand or so. So that's $70 million, which is more than enough for the entire $54 million budget crisis that they're talking about in pre-K. They've refused to consider any of those options.
The Senate is slated to consider HB 326, the governor's Hope Scholarship revision, tomorrow. The Senate's members of the Legislative Black Caucus today argued that by tying the Zell Miller full tuition scholarship to standardized test scores, African American students will by and large be cut out of the running. Here's Senator Freddie Powell Sims.
Fewer than 500 African American test takers scored that high compared to more than 5,100 white students. Of all African American test takers, only 2.7% scored above a 1,200 on their SAT. That means that at most only 2.7% of black students in Georgia would have a chance at the Zell Miller Scholarship. This, despite African Americans representing more than 30% of the population in Georgia.
Again, the Senate has that Hope Scholarship measure on its calendar for tomorrow. Today, the Senate passed two parts of what Senate Republicans hailed last week as its 10th Amendment agenda. SB 9, allowing the governor to opt out of federal cap and trade regulations, passed the Senate by a vote of 32-19. SB 61, permitting Georgia companies to continue manufacturing incandescent light bulbs after the federal government phases them out in 2012, passed the Senate by a vote of 35-19. However, Senate Resolution 55 had to garner a higher vote total to bring that matter of opting out of federal health care to the voters in a November referendum. Here's Senator Judson Hill.
Can we give Georgians the right to choose to preserve these freedoms? The answer is a resounding yes. Since our founding, both the federal and state governments have been tasked with affirming and protecting the rights of all citizens. It's widely recognized in the law that state constitutions may afford citizens greater individual liberties than the United States Constitution allows. In fact, the Constitution provides a floor, not a ceiling, for the rights of its citizens. You may ask, what about the pending constitutional challenges to Obamacare? Several federal courts have ruled Obamacare unconstitutional because the law mandates that all Americans must participate in Obamacare to have the privilege to live in this country. Regardless of the ultimate outcome of the court cases, this act is still needed and well worth preserving in Georgia's Constitution.
The Senate did not give SR 55 the two-thirds majority it required for passage. That measure failed by a vote of 35-10. Senator Hill has given notice that he's going to ask the Senate to reconsider its actions tomorrow. Reporting live from the Capitol, I'm Wandi Lawson for Primetime Lawmakers.
Wandi, before you go, back to the governor's new strategy for funding the pre-K program. Early education advocates spoke out harshly against the governor's initial plan. What's been the response to the new proposal?
Well, I think everyone must have come together and talked. I did talk to Pat Willis from Voices for Georgia's Children this morning, and she told me that her group supports the plan, despite those pay cuts for teachers and the number of slots that's been reduced for the 4-year-olds down from 5,000 to 2,000. She did say it's more important to maintain a full-day pre-K program and that this new plan is going to allow them to continue to have high-quality programs.
Thanks for the report, Wandi. Now on to tonight's leadership interview segment. Wandi sat down with House Majority Whip Edward Lindsey today and began by asking about the passage of HB 200 by the House and how this human trafficking bill differs from exploitation protections adopted in the past.
What HB 200 does is threefold. Number one, it clarifies what constitutes sexual trafficking, particularly in the areas of coercion and deception. Number two, it enhances the penalties for those who are guilty of human trafficking. We think it's very important, for instance, to view human trafficking at least as seriously as we do drug trafficking. So we up the penalties for human trafficking to match those. We also thought it was extremely important where human trafficking involving minors, and unfortunately a great amount of human trafficking does involve minors, that the penalties be enhanced even greater. The third thing that we do within the bill is treat those who are the victims of human trafficking with compassion, and we provide them with a pathway out of the quagmire that they are in and give them an ability to move on from this kind of horrible situation they're in, and give them an incentive to assist law enforcement to go after the bad guys.
So when you say a pathway, kind of describe what does that mean?
Twofold. Number one, we have what's called an affirmative defense in the bill that basically says that if you are guilty of prostitution, for instance, but you are pulled into prostitution as a result of coercion or deception, that we do provide you with a affirmative defense that basically allows you to come forward with positive evidence against the human trafficker and lay out the evidence against the human trafficker. That can provide a defense to, for instance, the charge of prostitution. In addition to that, we have a provision in the bill that allows for the victims of human trafficking to avail themselves of Georgia's existing victims fund, provided that they fully cooperate with the police.
The House also had successful passage of HB 87, the immigration reform legislation. What are your impressions of that bill and how it's going to impact state law?
It recognizes the inherent state interest when it comes to this issue. The fact of the matter is the state of Georgia is paying a very heavy price for the federal government's failure to act in this area. According to calculations that I've seen, approximately $2.4 billion of our budget are having to be expended because of illegal immigration. That includes a $1 billion price tag within our K through 12 education system.
And speaking of the budget, what are some of the priorities and kind of how do you balance those in, of course, what are tough economic times?
We have tried to prioritize and make sure that we take care of that which is most important first. And that, in my opinion, would be education and public safety.
And of course, cuts are inevitable.
Yeah.
So how do you kind of balance, you'll even have to make cuts to education and to public safety, but is there some sort of a litmus test that's used to kind of make
Well, what we're trying to do is within those areas, if you look at the overall budget, you'll see the cuts to be far less than in other areas. That's the number one area. Number two, what we're trying to do is give, for instance, within education, the local school systems greater flexibility in how they spend their dwindling tax dollars. If we can't give them more money, at least we can give them greater discretion on how they spend it. And for instance, with public safety, we're trying to look at a myriad of different things. For instance, we have presently going through the Georgia House a proposed commission that will spend the next year taking a look at those folks that we are incarcerating here in Georgia to make sure that we are drawing the necessary distinction between those folks that we are simply mad at and those folks that we are afraid of. Those folks that we are afraid of need to stay in prison. Those folks that we are simply mad at, but we could find some alternatives to prison, we need to do so.
The governor announced a new pre-K funding plan today, one that would allow for full-day pre-K. I'm wondering, what are your impressions of that plan?
We want pre-K to be more than simply a daycare center. We want it to actually be something that's helping get that child ready for his first 3 or 4 years of school.
The plan does, of course, include some cuts to teacher pay in the pre-K. It's 10% as opposed to the 30% that was called for if it was a half day. Are there any concerns about the quality of the teachers that you could attract with a salary that is obviously a little bit less?
Well, you're always concerned anytime you have pay cuts. But a great amount of our state employees are having to face cuts one way or the other. And pre-K teachers aren't going to be in any different category than they are. And quite frankly, that's also reflective as to what's taking place in the private sector.
The House has passed HB 326, the governor's Hope Scholarship revision. There are some who say it's making too fast of progress here in the General Assembly, and I'm wondering how you respond to those criticisms.
You know, we've been looking at this problem for over a year. I think that it's moving along with the necessary speed needed in order to do two things. Number one, get the bill to the governor as quickly as possible. Number two, let the parents and the students know exactly what they can expect in the next school year. That, I think, should be one of our key concerns. I can tell you personally, as a parent whose child is going to the University of Georgia next year, I certainly want to know what he can expect to receive in terms of the Hope Scholarship, and I believe that the rest of my constituents and the other citizens of Georgia are equally concerned about that.
And that's going to have to be our final point today. Representative Edward Lindsey is the majority whip in the House of Representatives. Thanks so much for your insights here on Primetime Lawmakers.
Thank you so much for having me.
We'll be talking pre-K. Representative Judy Manning, Representative Stuckey Benfield. Parents of small children will want to stick around for this. Stay with us. When lottery funds improve, do we get to bring back more kids?
This is first.
Welcome back to Primetime Lawmakers. A few moments ago, you heard Amanda's report on Governor Deal's new pre-K proposals. The pre-K program is facing funding problems because Georgia lottery revenues have not been able to keep up with the cost and demand. An earlier proposal by Governor Deal would have shortened the pre-K school day by several hours and cut teachers' salaries by 30%. Today's announcement restores the full school day, but shortens the pre-K school year from 180 days to 160 days. It increases class sizes from 20 students to 22. Teachers will also receive a 10% pay cut. Governor Deal was joined by a bipartisan group of legislators this morning when he announced his revised plan. Among them were tonight's guests. Representative Judy Manning of Marietta is the chair of the House Children and Youth Committee, and Representative Stuckey Benfield of Atlanta is a longtime education advocate in the General Assembly. It is timely that we have you both on this evening after this is pretty big news today. Chairman Manning, what do you think?
I think it is absolutely wonderful for the kids of Georgia.
Why is it important to continue funding pre-K programs here?
Well, the children of Georgia need to be educated. And in order to do that, we need a good foundation. And that's where pre-K starts us on a good foundation for reading by the third grade.
Are you happy with the deal, so to speak?
I am happy with the deal. It is so much better than where we started that I will say that I support the deal 100%.
Representative Benfield, what about you? Happy with these developments today?
I think overall it's a good deal, especially for Georgia's working families. And that's where my concerns primarily laid, because families who tried to work a job could not handle the transportation concerns and could not afford the additional aftercare dollars that they would need to expend in order to have the half day. So this is a positive move. There's still some kinks to work out, but overall I'm very pleased with today's development.
You know, parents of pre-K children, 4-year-olds out there, know how important it is. They are willing to, in many cases, camp out overnight to grab the slots of these programs.
I'm one of those pre-K parents, so I can definitely relate.
So shortening the day from shortening the pre-K year from 180 to 160 is acceptable to you, considering what we get from this.
Considering the tough choices that have to be made, and what the caveat I would add is I think it's very important to have flexibility with the providers and the school systems, where they can, if they want. I know some school systems look at a full year, and they have regular intervals of breaks, and to give flexibility to the private providers and the school systems to put those cuts in the days when they think fits best with their schedule. So flexibility is critical.
Representative Manning, how about you? You like that flexibility angle?
I do like that, and I understand that the schedule is that they will take about 20 days at the beginning of the year, but then when they start their year, it will coincide with their regular school year, so they'll end up at the same place at the end of May, which means that the kids will kind of have the feel that they're actually going to school, which is kind of a fun thing for them.
Now, Representative Manning, this makes up the budget shortfall, does it not? Do these numbers work?
54 million.
54 million. And that, is there elastic in this that'll restore some of this if some of these lottery revenues come back?
We hope so, but we're not counting on it for 12.
Okay. Representative Benfield, a question for you here. Will this still be available without charge to families in Georgia, regardless of their family income?
The governor has made a commitment to universal pre-K, meaning that the program is available to all families, and I think that is important. The reality is I've considered sliding scale or some type of income cap, but the majority of families who are currently in pre-K in Georgia earn under $40,000 a year, almost 70% of pre-K families. So imposing some type of sliding scale would not have made up for the budget deficit that we're seeing with the pre-K program.
Representative Manning, are teachers happy with this? Instead of a 30% cut, they're looking at a 10% cut. That may sound like a dumb question, but I'll have to ask it.
Well, I think they are happy with it because they didn't get the 30% cut. A 10% cut is manageable. It's not what they would like, but at least we're keeping our good qualified pre-K teachers in our classrooms, and we've got a full day, so they have the opportunity to teach the children what they need to know through pre-K.
Another way that they're having to stretch, obviously, is increasing class size by 10%, going from 20 to 22 kids. But because of the way these classrooms are set up, that's not quite as bad as it sounds, is it?
No, it's not. They usually have a parapro in there with the teacher, so it's 11-to-1 ratio, which is good.
Can I add something about that?
Absolutely.
I attended the budget committee hearings on the pre-K proposal, and this is an example of the process working. There was a teacher who came and testified and advocated for adding 2 students per class, and I think her suggestion was really the impetus for this becoming part of the governor's proposal. And although it's not ideal, we are going to have to look at consolidating some 300 classrooms. It is better than reverting to the half day.
Consolidating 300 classrooms across the state.
Well, when you're adding more students, you're looking at some consolidation. And the good news about this is our new head of Department of Early Care and Learning has been very receptive to working with the providers and trying to figure out how to best implement these changes.
Representative Manning?
Well, I understand there are about 4,200 slots, and when they add the 2 extra kids to each classroom, that will necessitate the number of the 300 classrooms. Then you add back the 100 that you get when you add only 2 kids, so you got a net of 200, which is not bad. And then they're adding 2,000 more slots also.
I'm glad you brought that up. 2,000 instead of the 5,000 that were hoped for. Is that right? Well, I guess you have to call that at least partial victory, right?
Well, they were going to have to phase those in anyway, and so they couldn't open that many slots all over the state in that length of time anyway. So 2,000 is a good start, and if we get some more money next time, I hope we'll extend that and make maybe more slots.
Representative Benfield mentioned that some of this deal came from direct input from a teacher, and the governor appeared to be listening. Does the governor appear to be listening on lots of levels?
I think the governor was listening to everyone. I know I made my voice heard, and I know Stephanie made her voice heard, and I know a lot of pre-K teachers made their voices heard. We've heard it every day for about the last 3 weeks. But I think the outcome is very, very positive, and the governor was very receptive to listening, which I thought was very good.
Is this the best deal we can hope for this year?
I think given the budgetary situation, this is about as good as we can, given the tough choices that had to be made. But again, I just want to stress that the devil's in the details, and I'd like to see flexibility at the local level where local school systems and also private providers can go to the commissioner of the Department of Early Care and Learning, Bobby Cable, who has been very receptive and very open, and ask for some waivers and some flexibility so that they can implement these changes as they best see fit at the local level.
Now, you mentioned private providers. Some people may not understand that these aren't public school classrooms per se operating, right? Some of these are actually being provided by private providers being paid by the state.
That's correct. In Georgia, unlike a lot of other states, we have a hybrid program. We have private providers and we also have public providers through the school system that get dollars through the lottery-funded pre-K program. So parents have the choice. They can go to a private provider or they can go to a public school and get the same quality pre-K program.
Representative Manning, an awful lot of folks of all kinds of stripes were standing behind the governor today as he made this announcement. Does that indicate we're going to have pretty smooth passage of this proposal?
I would hope so, because I think everybody's intent is to protect the pre-K program, and I think that's what we've done.
The Democrats and Republicans see more or less eye to eye on this. I know there's, as Representative Benfield mentioned, there's some details we need to work out, but more or less eye to eye saying, okay, this is how we keep the boat afloat.
Well, I guess when babies are born, they're not stamped either way, so we just let them be kids.
Representative Benfield, more of these kinks you're talking about just a moment ago, more details along with the private provider issue. What else needs to be worked out?
Well, I mean, just an example is the compensation. We are looking at a 10% reduction in pay, but I would like to see where we have real quality teachers at a master certification level who may have been in the classroom for 20 years plus, that there could be flexibility at the local level if they wanted to pay those teachers at 100% or even higher level, that they could, and maybe adjust the pay for some of the other personnel accordingly. Or if they've got dollars for classroom materials and they don't need all those funds for classroom materials, that they could shift some of those funds towards the parapro. So just giving that flexibility to make sure that it's a quality program is critical. And again, Bobby Cagle, the commissioner, has been very receptive to listening and responding to these local needs, and that's important.
Representative Manning, anything else you'd like to see worked out?
Well, of course, we'd like to have more money. We'd like to have more slots. We'd like to have all certified teachers. We'd like to have, I mean, it's a Christmas tree. We'd like to have a lot of stuff, but we're very happy and very pleased with the progress we've made based on where we came from, and I'm just very pleased that the governor was able to make this happen for us, and we'll have our kids going off to pre-K.
Funding this, paying for it, strictly from lottery funds.
Yes, sir, and I think maybe we ought to think about doing something with the QB formula, maybe putting pre-K in there, at least for some of the teacher salaries, perhaps, perchance, like the sliding scale that Stephanie talked about. It might be a possibility of us doing that. I don't think he slammed the door on any of it, but right now the lottery funds are what they are, and we have only that to work with. So until we do something different, we'll just have to do with what we have. Have
you seen any new research? I think some was just released last week on the effect of pre-K, how likely a child is to do in her education career all the way through given a pre-K start. Is there a real difference there? There
is a real difference there, and supposedly pre-K kids learn to read better. They also graduate from high school. They also get jobs. They also buy houses. They also, put in for retirement accounts. I mean, every step of the ladder, all the way up through life, a pre-K gives you a good start and a good help.
And Representative Benfield, in the little time we have left, people need to understand this is not glorified daycare.
Absolutely not. It is a curriculum. It is a quality-based program with certified teachers. We talked about that last time. I just know from my personal experience with the child in the pre-K program, she's already counting to 100, speaking Spanish, not only writing her name, but writing complete sentences and starting to read.
In fact, Representative Manning, I had a kindergarten teacher in Gwinnett County tell me that, oh, Mr. Slade, this was the kindergarten you think you got.
It's not play schooling. It's not learning how to color in the lines and cutting a straight line, or it's not lining up to go to recess and all the things that some of the people think that it is. It is a full curriculum. It is a certified curriculum. It's a quality curriculum, and one that we hope to improve as time goes on and make it even more stringent, I guess, for the kids to be able to go into first grade and learn how to read before the third grade level.
And
that's our goal.
And the real win here is preserving full day.
Absolutely. And thanks to Governor Deal for listening and responding appropriately.
Thank you so much for being here. It's great getting up to speed on this important issue with you. Thanks for coming. And coming up tomorrow on Primetime Lawmakers, Governor Deal's Hope Bill is scheduled to be taken up in the full Senate. We'll bring you another installment in our leadership interview series tomorrow evening, plus in-depth analysis on important legislative issues and the latest Capitol news tomorrow night right here at 7. If you'd like to see a repeat of this broadcast, you can see Primetime Lawmakers at 5:30 tomorrow morning on GPB. Coming up next, Rick Steves travels Europe with abandon. That's straight ahead, so stay tuned. And that's our broadcast for this 25th legislative day of the 2011 session. Thanks to our guests for joining us tonight. For Wandy Lawson and the whole Primetime Lawmakers team, I'm Scott Slade. Hope you have a great night.
This is a GPB original production.